Well, good day, everybody, and thanks again for coming into our webinar series. Today we're going to cover part two in a three-part series on inventory management. I'm going to try and stick a little better to our rules today and do about 45 minutes of overview, and then we'll take the last little bit to review any questions pertaining to today's topics. Our focus today is really going to be on inventory control and some of the pricing tools. Just as a reminder to everybody, all the webinars recordings are posted in our help system under webinars, along with any support documentation that we provided for this. So if you have some staff or you want to review, have some staff that want to look at it, then they're always available. So let's dive right in. I first want to talk about a little correction or a update that we did to the webinar we did 2 weeks ago. The programming team put out an update this past Sunday, February 19th, on how we search for inventory from work orders and utilities. And I thought it'd be good to bring this to everybody's attention. Surely you read it in the update notes that you get, but I just want to touch base on this for a minute. From work orders and from utilities, now by default, the search is going to look at all profit centers, all service categories, and all inventory, regardless of the stocking level. There is, however, a little bit of a condition around that. Because if we just do a search on everything in there and you have 15,000 inventory items, then obviously there's going to be a little delay in bringing all that information up. So some of the conditions on this to actually activate that search is going to be, you're going to have to either set a profit center and service category, or you're going to have to enter at least 2 characters that are not wildcard characters in any of the search parameters. I just thought I'd take a brief second to work with you on that and show you exactly how it works. So if we go to the utilities from the main ribbon and do a search on inventory, exactly as we said, the default now is going to be all profit centers, all service categories, and all inventory regardless of the quantity. What's required is either to identify a profit center along with a service category. It's got to be a combination. Okay, and if we bring that combination in, then we're going to search for any items underneath that profit center and category, regardless of the quantity. If I take these back, and the easiest way I can do that is just exit out of it and go back to it again so we see the default come up. Okay, other parameters you can search on would be at least 2 characters of a part number. So if I just put in a couple of characters and I do a search, then across all profit centers and service categories, any parts that have a part number with 1, 2 in it are then going to be displayed. I can narrow that down by saying only bring up the 1, 2. I can put as many characters as I want. So any of these search parameters require at least 2 characters in order to define that search capability. So this is something that I think is going to take a few people by surprise. Some people already say we love it, and some people say we don't like it too much. So we're going to get both angles on that. From a work order, same scenario. Now, if I've got an item in the service package that has a definition on it, so if I go to properties, this item has a definition, that's also a search parameter. So if I go to inventory from here, it's going to bring up everything that has that definition on it, again, across all profit centers and service categories, again, regardless of the quantity. So a definition is a search. If I look at this from a different angle, if I wanted to add a material item, which I've done here, which has no definition on it. In other words, the properties is I'm just adding this item. And if I go to inventory from here, then again, I go back to my broad search for all. But I do have to identify something in here. An example, if I just type a couple letters in, it's going to bring back anything with oil filter in. So remember, you can use any search parameters, any combinations, or you can go back to the old way it used to work by selecting a profit center and a service category. It's got to be a combination of those two. So hopefully you guys can take advantage of that. It's a brand new feature, kind of came from some of the previous discussions we've had on this, and I hope you'll find that useful. So let's go into today's agenda. We're gonna be right on time today. There's going to be some really good things I think you guys will find. Our agenda today is going to cover inventory control. We're going to talk about inventory material reorders, purchase orders, pricing and pricing levels, batches on inventory items, history on inventory items, and then we're going to spend a couple minutes at the close here on the advanced price editing tool, and I'm just open that up a little bit for discussion. So let's dive right in with today's content. We're going to talk about inventory control, and what we're saying is from the inventory item, inventory menu group. So let's just dive right into the software. I'm going to actually let me just close this one up here so that's out of the way. And I will then go into an inventory search. Let me just bring that item up back here. And I'll just take this oil filter an example. So for the first topic on the inventory control, let's talk about receiving inventory. Now, there's a couple of ways this can be done. It can be done from the setup. It can also be done from the utilities inventory search. You'll get the same menu options. When you receive inventory, if you receive them using individual inventory records, simply identify the item from the list, make your selection, select receive. The requirements on receiving an inventory is going to be to identify a supplier. Who did you buy it from? This is my default supplier that you can see in the background, so I usually go to this supplier to buy this item, but I can buy it from any supplier. I'm not required to buy it from that same supplier. So anybody that I buy from. Enter the supplier invoice number, or if you've already made an entry for that invoice number, then you've got that list on your drop-down. So I'm just going to put in here couple of ones, so my supplier invoice number. Identify how many of these items you received. An example, let's say I received 10 of these items. Verify your cost on the item, because there may be a price change on the cost. And above all, I always say check the total. The total always is a great tool, because if I've received 10 and my pricing doesn't match up, then I can put in whatever pricing would be the total or the extension on the supplier's invoice. It's going to take the total divided by the quantity, and then it will populate the individual unit cost. I want to bring into this discussion the return option. Let's make an example that I received 10 of these items on this supplier invoice, but I don't want 10. In this case, I'm going to send 2 of them back, so I have the ability to go in and say, return 2 of the 10 items I've received. What I mean by this is I am going to be billed for 10 items. However many came on the invoice is what I'm going to be billed for. In this case, I want to return 2 of them. This will move 2 of these items into the return item bin for this supplier, and then I will process a credit, getting a credit for the 2 items that I returned to the supplier. Back orders does not work from this screen. Back orders will only work on purchase orders, which you will see a little bit later in this seminar today. Let me draw your attention while we're here to a very important scenario or option in the receive inventory, which is the ability to update my manufacturer's suggested retail price and or update my inventory material cost. You'll notice that my price has changed, right? When I came in here, last time I bought this, I paid $28. I changed it to $290, which makes each unit $29. If my manufacturer's suggested retail price changed, and I make that entry, if these 2 boxes are checked, then those fields, the MSRP and the cost, are going to get updated on this inventory material record. Now that's fairly important to know. Okay, I have my system set to default to automatically update these items. I can override that at this field by simply unchecking the boxes. So I can manually interact, or I can let my defaults control updating the cost and the MSRP. I'm going to show you that here in a minute, but I'm going to go ahead and process this order. By processing that order and updating, okay, you'll now notice my stock level has increased by those 8 items because 2 of them I'm going to return. If I look at the pricing, my pricing has changed because of the update cost and the update MSRP. This is important, everybody, because understand when you update your cost, if any of your pricing is established on formulas, which all of mine are, as you can see, margin, cost plus, okay, my sell price is automatically going to update because my new cost went from 280 to 290. 50% gross profit margin on the new cost will increase my selling price. So please keep that in mind, that when you make these updates to the cost for your selling prices, if they're formula driven, meaning a calculation, your sell prices are going to automatically change. So just keep that in mind. I'll go ahead and save that entry. Let me show you briefly about these defaults for the update MSRP and the update cost. Those are in your system under the Setup tab, under Location Settings, under Purchase. Here you can set your default. So if you don't want it to update, then you uncheck the boxes, and you can again manually override these settings at the inventory receive, or you can leave them checked by default and uncheck them at the material receive if that's your preference. Okay, so let's do this right quick. I'm just going to do a save on that. Okay, we're then going to work our way back to the slide screen, and let's just do a quick review. So receiving requires a supplier, an invoice number, a return quantity if you're going to do that. Back orders are only functional on purchase orders. Enter your cost, core cost if it has a core cost, and I always verify, make sure you verify the total amount. That's the extension on the supplier invoice. If you wanted to update, automatically update your MSRP and cost. If the boxes are checked, it will automatically update, or you can override those settings. And to set your defaults for the update under the location settings, purchases. I think Jeff has a poll question he wants to throw out, and so Jeff, if you can bring that up, let's take a quick look at the poll question. Okay. All right, so guys, we're going to prompt you with a poll question. I'm trying to see it here right quick, and I always forget a little bit about how that works. Okay, but go ahead and provide your answers. We'll give this about 30 seconds. All right. So Jeff, I'm struggling just a little bit. I can't remember how to bring that poll question up. Could you read it out if you would, please?
Yeah, it's if I make an error when receiving inventory, what aspects can I edit? It was quantity, price. You can delete the entire entry and edit supplier. We have about 50% voted, so I'll close the poll now.
Okay. All right, so what can we edit or what can we change? So you can edit the quantity on a receive item. The answer is yes, you can edit the quantity, but there are restrictions around that. The quantity can be edited at the supplier invoice as long as you have not sold any items out of that batch. Okay, so as long as you have not sold any items out of that batch. Let's go look at the purchase that we just made on that inventory item. Let me go to supplier invoices.
Your selling bills.
Okay, I'm going to try and narrow this down to that particular supplier. Let's do a search on that. and the invoice we used for that purchase today was 1111. In order to change the quantity, I can select that item, I can go to a view, and I can change the quantity right here. Actually, I can change the received quantity and or the return quantity. But understand, I can only do this as long as this supplier invoice has not been posted and as long as no items have been sold out of the 8 that I received. So once you've sold out of that batch, you're not going to be able to make changes to these entries. Once you've posted the invoice, you're not going to be able to make changes to the quantities. Can I edit the price? Right here is my cost. I can edit the price right here. Okay. There is another feature on editing the cost, which would actually come from the inventory item itself. So if we go back, gee whiz, I forgot what item that is, so let me just grab this at 10358. Okay, so if I go back to my inventory and let's just bring that up. Okay, so here's the item. We're going to talk a little bit later about batches, but I do have the ability, this must not be the item that I just received because I received 8 of them. So regardless to that point, I do have the ability to go in and edit the batch cost. So I can come in. Now what that is going to do is it's going to divide that by the remaining quantity. So in this batch you see I've bought 100. I've sold 2, so I have 98 left. So if I make an edit to the cost, it's only going to affect the remaining 98 items. In this case, where I have 80 of them, if I edit that batch, then it's going to, the change, of course, is going to affect all 80 of the items. So what's important, if you're going to change the pricing from the batch feature, it's only going to affect the amounts under the remaining column, and it would be by purchase invoice, by supplier invoice. So I do have a couple of options to change the pricing. Can you delete the entire entry? Unfortunately, you can't. The reasoning why is because every time you make an entry, it broadcasts across your general ledger, affecting all the related general ledger accounts. So we cannot allow you to just go in and delete that entry. Does not happen with point of sale accounting software. So you cannot delete the entire entry. The end result could be to completely reverse it, but the word delete is not true. We cannot delete it. You can edit the supplier. Actually, you can. Here I am on the supplier invoice. Okay, so to take any line item on the invoice, I can do a view, and you'll see I can change supplier, or I can change supplier and supplier invoice. So the answer to most of these questions are going to be the changes would be made, best practices would be made at the actual supplier invoice before you post the supplier invoice to the account payable. And the incorrect answer would be, can I delete the entire entry? And I can't, because it has gone to my general ledger. I can reverse it, I can't delete it. So edit quantities, even return quantities, prices, supplier, and or supplier invoices are best done at the purchases underneath the supplier invoice module. Okay, so that's where most of those changes would best be done. All right, let's move forward then and go back to our quick presentation. Let's move on to inventory recounts. Inventory recounts can be done in the software, okay, on any particular item. So I'm going to go back to setup. We can take the same item, it doesn't matter, and I have a recount feature. If I select recount on the individual inventory item, the system is simply going to ask me to enter the new values. So I have on the left side current values. On the right side, I would enter the new values. So if it happens to be that I've actually got 180 inventory items, I can bring that up. That'll be a recount of 2. Okay, it's going to lift the average price off of the inventory record in the background, and if there was any core on that. Okay, so we can obviously process this type of entry. All right. The last item on here, now this one's going to not allow me to go into the advanced to go to the batches. So what I need to do here is I need to try and locate that same inventory item that I did this on, and I thought I had it, a 10358. Don't know why that's not bringing up my CH10358, but I'm not seeing the purchase on it here. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of this, and we're going to go to a different item in here where we can do an example on that. So to recount. So I can go in, like I say, and monitor these items. So, and again, now I don't have any batches on this item. Guys, I apologize for this. I had this all organized a little bit earlier, but let's just go back in and do our recounts here. So again, the system says I have 10 items in stock at an average cost of $220. So if I say I have 12 items in, then I'm going to get a recount up by 2. If I say I have 8 items, whenever I enter a quantity into this field, an advanced button activates, which allows me to do recounts to a specific batch. I apologize, in this case I only have the one batch, but if I had several batches that had different pricing, I can determine which of these batches I want to apply that recount to. So I would just simply identify the new value. I would bring that batch up, and that recount would then apply to that specific batch. So if I do general recounts, the software is going to use what's called FIFO, first in, first out, meaning the 2 that I'm recounting would come from the oldest purchase. If I want to recount to a specific batch, then I will go to the advanced, identify the batch, bring it up, and the recount would then be applied to that specific batch, which again may have different pricing involved in it. So that way, when we go to do the credit, we are ensured that we're using the right credit pricing for the items purchased and the items returned. Okay, so let's take a look at this back on the screen, and we have new values, the actual value, the per cost value, and the core unit. Recounts by default will go to FIFO. Okay, and you can apply those to a specific batch.